It's not about clothing. It never was. But some people still believe, or prefer to believe, that appearance defines someone's worth. And when that happens, there's always a price to pay. Sometimes high, sometimes irreversible. This is one of those stories that flips the script without shouting, that shows, through silence and presence, what happens when the truth walks in wearing flip-flops. Clara walked into the store like anyone would, calm posture, observant eyes. Her worn-out sandals, wrinkled dress, and loosely tied hair quickly drew attention, but not the right kind. One saleswoman turned up her nose. Another pretended to be too busy to assist. A manager walked right past her without even a greeting. It was as if Clara was invisible, or worse, an inconvenience. She observed. Every sideways glance, every impatient sigh, every dismissive gesture masked as professionalism. No one asked her name. No one cared what she was looking for. Maybe because, in their eyes, she couldn't possibly be looking for anything in there. Maybe because prejudice had already spoken louder than any word she might have said. What no one there knew, and probably would never have imagined, was that Clara wasn't there by accident. That visit was part of something much bigger. A few days earlier, Clara had closed a deal that would change the course of that store. A quiet, strategic merger orchestrated behind the scenes with investors who believed in her talent as a leader. Clara had been invited to take over the company's controlling interest, and as her first move, she decided to visit one of the branches incognito, to observe the environment without filters. She wanted to see with her own eyes how people behaved when they thought no one important was watching. She wanted to understand the culture she was now responsible for. She was treated like a nobody, but she left that place as someone carrying a powerful truth. The stories that really matter are the ones that reveal who we are when we think no one is watching. And in that store, the reflection was clear and deeply troubling. 2 days later, that same staff was called to an emergency meeting. The previous owner introduced the new majority shareholder. She's already here. I want you all to welcome her with respect and attention because she's a woman who will bring a new vision of leadership to us all. Clara walked in. This time, no sandals, no disguise, but the same firm, observant look. Silence swept the room. The saleswoman who ignored her looked away. The manager who walked past turned pale, and everyone felt the same thing. They didn't know where to hide. But Clara, with elegance, broke the ice. Before we talk about goals and change, I want to tell you a story. My story. I'm a seamstress's daughter. I grew up being told I had to dress well to be taken seriously. For a long time, I believed that, until I realized that character doesn't wear labels, that respect can't be measured by brand names, and that no one, absolutely no one, has the right to decide who deserves to be treated with dignity. She didn't yell, didn't humiliate, didn't seek revenge. She simply showed, with calm, with strength, with a presence that money can't buy. And in that moment, the store stopped being just a place of sales. It became a stage for transformation, for learning, for new stories. Clara didn't fire anyone, didn't cause a scene. Her leadership was different. She preferred to spark awareness over handing out punishment. She offered training. She listened to employees' stories. She gave them a chance to redeem themselves and to build a new chapter. Because what she wanted wasn't revenge, it was justice. And more than that, it was change. She wanted to show that every gesture matters, that every customer interaction could be the start of a story far beyond a sale, and that when you lead with purpose, even pain can become a tool for impact. This story isn't a fairy tale. It's a wake-up call, a mirror, an invitation to rethink behaviors that often go unnoticed. Because prejudice rarely screams, it whispers. It hides behind formalities, assumptions, and unchallenged habits. But Clara challenged them, and with that, changed everything. Now tell me, what if you were in her place? Or worse, what if you were part of the staff? How would you treat someone who walks into your space wearing simplicity? Would you have enough empathy to see beyond it? Or would automatic judgment take over? The world doesn't change with canned speeches. It changes when someone decides to write new stories and inspires others to do the same. That's what Clara did, and it's what you can do too, every day with every choice, every glance, every word. If this story stirred something in you, share it, because maybe someone beside you needs a reality check too. And remember, it's not about clothing. It never was. It's about respect, about awareness, about who you choose to be, even when you think no one's watching. But before that turning point came the time of doubt, of stumbles, of dreams no one believed in. Clara grew up hearing she needed to be realistic, that people like her didn't get far. She heard advice rooted more in others' frustrations than in real care. With every "that's not for you," a spark of resistance lit up inside her. Because even without knowing exactly how or when, Clara had already sensed that some stories only change when someone dares to write them differently. At 17, she got an internship at a small company. She was the youngest, the quietest, and, not coincidentally, the least taken seriously. While others fought to stand out, Clara did the opposite. She dove silently into the details, learned by watching, noting mistakes and successes, understanding the dynamics of those who commanded versus those who were just another face. That experience didn't seem like much from the outside, but inside she knew. She was gathering material for her breakthrough, and the breakthrough came, not like in the movies, with music and applause. It came in the form of late-night study, sleepless nights, hard decisions. Clara turned down offers, gave up easier paths, and most of all, learned to trust her intuition. She took online courses with her intern paycheck, traded favors for mentorships, jotted down ideas in an old notebook while waiting for the bus. Every step was small but steady, and every little win fed her long-standing desire to rewrite the stories that had always excluded people like her. Years later, when she graduated and got a job at a major company, Clara felt the sting of prejudice again, now hidden behind meeting room smiles, subtle exclusions, and invitations that never came. Her presence seemed to bother people. After all, how could a simple woman from the outskirts, with no right connections, have gotten that far? The truth is, she didn't succeed despite all that. She succeeded because of it. Every obstacle had trained her to endure. Every silenced moment had taught her to listen beyond words. Over time, she rose in her career. It wasn't fast, it wasn't easy, but it was real. And one day, Clara was invited to lead a new project at the same company where, years earlier, she was barely acknowledged. She entered the building with the same posture as always, quiet, humble, but with eyes that had seen far more than anyone knew. When she stepped into the meeting room, dressed simply and without fanfare, some new employees assumed she was part of the cleaning crew. They ignored her, chatted as if she weren't there, until the director said, "Everyone, this is Clara. She's the new project coordinator." The silence that followed said more than any speech. Some swallowed hard, others looked away, but Clara just smiled, because at that moment she realized this wasn't just a promotion. It was proof that her stories had value, that every humiliation endured had given her an extra layer of strength, and from that moment on, she wouldn't just write her path. She would make room for other Claras to exist, too. She began hiring beyond resumes, valued life experiences, listened to voices that had been silenced, extended a hand to talent hidden in forgotten neighborhoods, and by doing so, Clara began transforming that company from the inside out. Slowly, once skeptical colleagues began to see what she had always seen, that talent doesn't have a fixed address, and that respect should never depend on appearance. Years went by. Clara became a reference. She spoke at events, gave lectures, was invited to interviews, but never forgot where she came from. She still wore flip-flops on weekends, visited her old neighborhood, and listened to the same stories her mother used to tell at bedtime, now retold by younger voices. And in every new chapter, there was a trace of her, the girl who never fit the mold, the woman who never gave up on being herself. Today, when Clara walks into a store or sits in a meeting, she knows she's being watched. She knows that many still judge based on appearance before even listening, but she also knows she holds the power to change that cycle through presence, attitude, and empathy. Because it's not enough to win, you have to transform. And that's where the question comes in. What if it were you in Clara's place? How would you treat someone who enters your space with simplicity? Would you see beyond the clothes, the shy demeanor, the silence? Or would you risk repeating a mistake that has already ruined so many good stories? The world changes when we change how we look, and every gesture of yours could be writing, unintentionally, a narrative that will be remembered forever, for better or for worse. So think, what kind of role do you want to play in the stories of others? If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and stick with us. Because here, We don't just tell stories, we transform realities through them. When Clara decided she wanted to work with major brands, she heard laughter before she could even finish the sentence. "You? In those clothes?" a classmate mocked loudly. And that's when she realized that for many, a dream is only valid if it comes with a fancy last name or a tailored blazer. But the truth is, the most dangerous dreams are born from resistance, because they take root in the impossible. And Clara didn't just want to enter the market, she wanted to change it from the inside out. She applied for internships, but the look spoke louder than her resume. A manager, without even trying to hide it, told her she didn't fit the company's profile. It was as if everything around her screamed that there was no place for someone like her. Simple, quiet, lacking the right credentials. But what no one realized was that Clara was building her own credentials. Patience, awareness, active listening. And in the silence between one rejection and another, she kept taking notes, like someone writing a story that only makes sense in the final chapter. Even when no one believed in her, Clara stayed focused. Instead of growing bitter, she dove into understanding how things really worked behind the scenes. She took free courses, studied consumer behavior, explored the world of luxury retail without ever needing to dress the part. And she discovered a paradox. The farther she moved from the expected image, the closer she got to the essence missing in many leaders. But like every great story, before the rise, there came a fall, and this one nearly made her give up. It happened during a job interview, the hardest hit she'd ever taken. After weeks of studying the company, preparing every answer, she walked into the room full of hope. But a single glance from the recruiter, followed by a subtle raise of the eyebrows, was enough to let her know her presence had already been dismissed. The interview barely lasted 5 minutes, and in that awkward silence, Clara discovered that prejudice doesn't shout, it simply ignores. As she left, she heard the receptionist whisper to a colleague, "Did you see? She really thought she had a chance here." That sentence echoed in Clara's mind for days. It was as if all the childhood stories she'd heard about meritocracy had been swallowed by a cynical laugh, and for the first time she seriously thought about quitting. Maybe it really wasn't for her. Maybe wearing the armor of humility wasn't enough in a world that only respects the shine of a designer label. But in the morning of that crushed dream, something sparked inside her. The pain of rejection became fuel for a new question. What if I wasn't trying to get in? What if one day I bought that room? It was just a flicker. A ridiculous thought. But powerful stories are born that way, from a wild flash of light in the middle of the darkness. Clara still didn't know how she would get there, but she was done going back. And in the gap between failure and fury, a new will was born, to turn the fall into momentum. While others gave up at the edge of difficulty, Clara dove in. She started offering small consulting services to neighborhood businesses, helping local shopkeepers understand the value of customer experience. With no fancy resources but with a sharp eye, she turned forgotten shops into warm, profitable spaces. The stories of these small victories began to spread. A bakery that doubled its revenue, a thrift store that became known for exceptional service, and through word of mouth, a reputation grew, a woman who could enchant without flaunting. On that alternate path, an investor, impressed by the transformation of a shop where he was a client, went looking for that Clara who doesn't wear heels but changes everything she touches. Their meeting was direct and informal, in a downtown cafe, where she presented her ideas scribbled in a notebook. The investor wasn't charmed by spreadsheets, he was moved by purpose. He saw in her what so many companies lacked: authenticity. That's how Clara secured the seed capital to start her own consultancy, specializing in humanized luxury retail. The turning point began there. No spotlight, but full of substance. Clara started training teams from major brands, retraining the eyes of salespeople and shifting their focus to real customers, not stereotypes. Ironically or not, she was invited by an international chain to lead a reform project, the same one that years before hadn't even offered her a glass of water. And little did they know that behind that simplicity was a mind full of stories, not to hold grudges but to redesign the path with empathy. And yet, the real turning point was still to come. The proposal came by email. The boutique that once turned its back on Clara was about to be acquired by the same international chain that now had her as the CEO of its new customer experience division. The board requested an in-person, discreet evaluation to see if the team was aligned with the brand's new values. Clara didn't hesitate. She slipped on flip-flops, a plain t-shirt, and entered the store quietly. The reception, cold, hostile, and predictable. Once again, her appearance spoke louder than her resume, and that was exactly what she needed to prove. As she walked between racks and sideways glances, Clara observed. A mother with a young daughter was ignored for 10 minutes. An elderly man wearing a cap asked for help and was pointed to the exit. Smiles only appeared when someone walked in with branded shopping bags. Clara took note of everything, as if recording a scene she already knew by heart, and deep down, it hurt, because she knew this wasn't just about a store, it was about a pattern, a kind of social blindness that keeps repeating in so many stories. The next morning, the announcement was made, an emergency meeting with the new owner. Some employees laughed, others didn't even show up, until she walked into the room, this time with her executive posture, but the same look of someone who never forgot where she came from. Silence fell. The same saleswoman who had dismissed her trembled, but Clara didn't raise her voice. She preferred to make noise with facts, and in that moment, the entire store understood. The era of judging people's worth by their clothes was over. But there was more to say, much more. Clara's speech echoed for days. It wasn't aggressive, but it was firm. She didn't name names or humiliate anyone. She simply showed with facts how silent prejudice can destroy entire businesses. She spoke of stories that never turned into purchases because the customer was mistreated, of missed opportunities because someone chose to assess who deserved good service based on appearance. And for the first time, the faces behind the counter understood the impact of a single act of neglect. The board, present in the room, took immediate action. The entire service department was restructured. Mandatory training on empathy and diversity was implemented, and, in a symbolic gesture, a former employee who had been fired for not fitting the profile was rehired. Clara followed everything closely but avoided the spotlight. Her goal was never revenge. It was alignment. The recognition came, yes, but as a result of serious work driven by purpose. And this was only the beginning. Soon after, industry magazines began highlighting the boutique's transformation. Sales soared, the reputation was restored, and other companies began seeking Clara out to replicate the model. But the greatest recognition didn't come from the media. It came from a customer who, with tears in her eyes, thanked Clara for being treated with respect for the first time in a store like that. And it's these small human victories that build great stories. Still, Clara knew, no amount of recognition outweighs the commitment to continuous change. Months later, the boutique that was once a symbol of exclusion became a reference for humanized service. It wasn't just about selling anymore. It was about welcoming. Now even more respected, Clara started visiting other branches anonymously, testing whether the lessons had truly been learned. Some recognized her, others didn't. But all of them, unknowingly, were being invited to write new stories, this time with more awareness and less judgment. What changed wasn't just the training, but the culture. Salespeople who once served with disdain began to listen, make eye contact, and offer genuine help. The store became a space for unexpected encounters, where humble people felt welcomed and demanding customers admired the respectful environment. Clara made a point of repeating, true luxury isn't in the price tag, but in the value of the experience. And every gesture was an opportunity to rewrite what had once hurt her so deeply. But even with all these achievements, Clara never grew complacent. She knew the world moves fast, and that prejudice knows how to disguise itself. So she remained alert, humble, and determined to make respect a non-negotiable value. After all, as long as someone is being judged by their cover, there will always be room for new stories of transformation. And maybe, around the next corner, it'll be your turn to walk into a room and surprise those who thought they knew who you were. Now tell me, with complete honesty, what if you were in Clara's place? Don't answer quickly. Pause. Take a deep breath. Picture the scene. You walk into a store wearing simple clothes, flip-flops on your feet, a curious look, and a heart carrying a mission. But before you can even say good morning, someone has already decided who you are, or worse, who you can't be, judged by the surface, ignored for your essence, treated as if appearance were enough to define your dignity. So I ask again, how would you treat someone like that? Someone who crosses your path without status, without titles, without visible symbols of power. Would you offer a genuine smile, a welcoming word, or avert your gaze as if to say, you don't belong here? The truth is, we often operate on autopilot, And in that autopilot, we become reflections of the environment, of limiting beliefs, of prejudice disguised as professional posture. That's where so many stories are lost. Beautiful stories, powerful ones, transformative, but that never happened, because they were cut off by a sideways glance, a dismissive tone, a door that shut before even asking someone's name. Clara could be any one of us, and so could the saleswoman. We've all been on both sides, being judged and judging. But what separates those who merely survive from those who truly transform the world is awareness. It's the daily choice to see others beyond the surface. It's realizing that every gesture we make is writing, even unintentionally, a narrative someone will remember forever. And that leads to the question that won't go away. What kind of role do you want to play in other people's stories? Do you want to be remembered as the person who made a difference with a simple gesture? Or as someone who passed by, judged, and vanished, leaving only a trail of indifference? Because yes, even silence has an impact, sometimes more than words. The world changes when we change the way we see, when we stop searching for potential clients and start recognizing human beings in their fullness, when we replace judgment with listening, arrogance with curiosity, rush with presence. That's where new stories are born, and where old wounds begin to heal. And if you think this is just a pretty speech, maybe you've never been on the other side. Maybe you've never felt the weight of being ignored for not looking important. But many have, and many still do. Every day, in stores, offices, elevators, waiting rooms, in glances that measure, in gestures that exclude, in words that cut like a knife. Clara didn't walk into that boutique by chance. She had a purpose, and, ironically, was judged for looking for something she didn't even want to buy. What she really wanted was to observe, understand, test, and the test was clear. There's still much to transform, but there is also hope, because it only takes one story like this to light a fire in thousands of hearts, and maybe yours is one of them. So if this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself, because when something truly touches us, it carries a truth that needs to be shared. You never know who might need to hear exactly what you just read. So do this. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and stay with us. Here, we don't just tell stories, we inspire change. We shake the system. We show that every person, every detail, every choice can be the turning point of an entire reality. Because stories are more than entertainment. They're mirrors, they're warnings, they're invitations, and sometimes they're the final push someone needed to see the world differently and make it better. You have that power. And it starts with the way you see, listen, welcome, with the way you choose to be present. And if you still have any doubt, go back to the beginning and remember. It all started with a simple woman walking into a store, and ending with an entire country reflecting on appearance, respect, and humanity. Never underestimate the impact of a single story well told, and never underestimate the power of a single action well taken, because in the end, we are all characters and authors at the same time, and the next chapter is up to you.